All right, welcome back to Art Appreciation. This week I'm trying a little something different. I've written out my text for the lecture and I have it over here on the side. So if you see me looking over to the side, that's what I'm looking at. I'm just trying to keep myself more focused and on task here. Okay, so this week we're looking at words and sounds in art. We're going to start with words, obviously. Now, words and sounds are not usually a part of the elements of art. They're included here because artists have used them as significant means of expression throughout the ages and across cultures. We can make an easy connection between the art of words and commercial media such as web design, graphic design, and advertising. We can look back 15,000 years to precursors of written language, seeing a connection to pictographs and hieroglyphics that were used as a graphic system of communication. Today, we use symbols like emojis to communicate a concept or idea more effectively than words can even. The Surrealist painter René Magritte created a painting that was meant to heighten our awareness of the connection between word and image, in this example called The Treachery of Images from 1928. He's painted a realistic painting of a pipe on a plain background with the words below, "Ceci n'est pas une pipe." Now this, if you know a little bit of French, it translates to, "This is not a pipe." And you might be wondering, what? It is a pipe, isn't it? Is he trying to trick us or something? But he's right, it's not a pipe. It's a painting of a pipe, and there's a big difference. He's trying to remind us that there's a difference between the things and their representation in art. Art might be a representation of reality, but it is not reality. This is also an example of conceptual art because it engages your mind in the process of deciphering the meaning beyond just being pleasing to look at. So in this case, the concept or the idea is just as important, if not more important, than the image. Joseph Kosuth was another conceptual artist, and he, like Magritte, challenges us with his artwork entitled One and Three Chairs from 1965. He asks us to consider whether one of the three chairs is any more or less of a chair than the other. Is the image of a chair the real physical chair, or the text definition of the chair more chair than the other? What do you think? The connection between word and image in this example is not so much conceptual, like the examples we were just looking at. Instead, it's meant to evoke strong emotions in the viewer. It was created by David Wojnarowicz, and it's called Untitled One Day This Kid from 1990. Wojnarowicz was an important gay rights activist who used his art to raise awareness. The photograph is actually the artist as a kid, and the words imply a kind of autobiography. He describes all the cruelty and pain that's been inflicted on this boy, all because he, as the text concludes over at the lower right-hand side, quote, discovers he desires to place his naked body on the naked body of another boy. In this way, there's a little bit of friction between the image of a happy little kid and the words that we read that evoke anger, pain, and sympathy. So some artists play with connection between word and image. Others use words as images, such as Yoko Ono. She made a series of works that were actually just instructions for how to create a painting, such as this one, Painting for the Wind. Cut a hole in a bag filled with seeds of any kind and place the bag where there is wind. So there's no image per se, instead the words become the image. Her concept was to guide the viewer to visualize themselves as the artist, so that once you read the instructions, you would imagine what this painting might look like, so you're completing the work in your mind. She didn't care whether the viewer actually created a painting, just that their mind had imagined that they had. She was part of a movement called Fluxus that believed anyone could make art and that art was held in the mind of the viewer. Jenny Holzer is another one of those artists who uses words as images. She presents evocative sayings or phrases, which she calls truisms, and she places them in really public places, like, in this case, downtown New York. Bruce Nauman also uses electric light in his text-based work to incorporate the language of commercial neon signs. In 100 Live and Die, he has 4 columns of 25 phrases in different colors that reflect onto the floor. Each phrase contains the words live or die. The phrases are both beautiful as sculpture and meaningful as text. The other image on the left states a belief about who artists are. The true artist helps the world by revealing mystic truths. In both works, he uses irony, text, color, and connections to commercial signs. Glenn Ligon also uses neon in his artwork, but in this case, he's blacked out the part of the tube that's facing us, so that the background is illuminated only, and the words are red in contrast to the background. The artist took the text from a book by Gertrude Stein about a biracial woman in her pursuit of acceptance. Here's another work by Ligon that uses text and addresses some issues of race and perception. This one is actually on view at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, so you should go back and check it out in person when they reopen. Several years ago, Canadian visiting artist Troy Nickel created an earthwork on GSU's campus using text that he borrowed from a Maya Angelou poem. Here it is when it was first dug into the ground on the left, and then on the right after the first snowfall. In graphic design, we refer to the text as copy, and copy can illustrate concept as well as communicate information. Like we learned in the earlier chapter on semiotics, our brain interprets visual imagery and makes connections to other things, thoughts, and feelings. If we compare these two texts of the word Berlin, they say the same thing, but the way that the text has been rendered conjures up different meanings and associations for the viewer. We have the invention of movable type in China around 1045, movable type being the system and technology of printing using movable components to reproduce individual letters, numbers, punctuation marks, that kind of thing, onto the paper. And the invention of the printing press comes around 1440 in Europe. And with that, we acquired great advances in preserving and advancing knowledge by printing books that are affordable to many people. The typeface or font itself can express meaning apart from what the words say. Typographers design the way letters look to create typefaces as an art form. You can pull down your list of fonts on any software program and see the variety of typefaces available to communicate your idea. There are fonts that are loved and hated by many. For instance, Helvetica. That was an industry standard for decades and the only font that I know of to have its own documentary about its popularity. On the other hand, Comic Sans and Papyrus are widely mocked by graphic design enthusiasts. I don't know if you've ever seen the SNL skit about Papyrus, but it's hilarious. I don't want to get in trouble for copyright infringement, so I'm going to leave the YouTube link right there and you can watch it in your own time.
You've shown me this before. I don't even think this is literally papyrus. Maybe that was the starting point, but they clearly modified this. Well, whatever they did, it wasn't enough!
The word calligraphy, which is Greek for beautiful writing, probably brings to mind fancy wedding invitations. But the art of handwriting is practiced all over the world. The representation of words is especially important in Islamic art because representational images, in other words, like depictions of people, animals, etc., especially in a religious context, are forbidden in art. Instead, they incorporate quotes from the Quran in beautiful calligraphy. Here on the right is a piece of script from an Iranian poem. Graffiti is another form of the art of handwriting. The styles can be so dramatic and exaggerated that the text is difficult to read to a person not familiar with the designs and standards of the technique. Words are particularly important in some narrative works of art to communicate the story. The image we see on the screen here, this is a panel from the cartoon Mouse, which is a memoir by the cartoonist Art Spiegelman, who recounts his father's struggle to survive the Holocaust as a Polish Jew. This was a Pulitzer Prize-winning graphic novel which draws on his father's recollections of the events that he personally experienced and details the ways that the war reverberates through generations. The story is conveyed by words as well as by image. In the next video, we're going to take a look at the ways in which artists incorporate sound into their work.